welcome to the Lone Star Varsity High School Football Show. I'm Phil Torino. Thanks very much for joining us, and as always, this video is sponsored by Happy State Bank. If you've been following some of the content we've been doing so far this year, you notice that we're experimenting with an alternative story format instead of the typical game story you'll see after a high school football game. One of those things is we examine sort of what the lead item is of the game, what looked good and what didn't. I think it's gotten some really strong feedback from using that, and I'd like to bring it into the weekly show that we do as well. So the first thing is actually what we need to see this week. What are we keeping our eye on? What are sort of the most newsworthy things of the week two? So first of all, I think Friendship and El Paso El Dorado, this is a compelling matchup because first of all, the Tigers had a huge lead in this game last year, a 35-point lead, and they managed to squander it. I'd love to see how this year's matchup sort of pans out for the Tigers, especially after such a dominant win once again against El Paso Burgess. Cooper and Randall, this is a really strong 5A matchup. I guess we're going to see if one of these teams potentially is a pretender in terms of being what are both really high ranked in the Lone Star Varsity High School Football poll. Randall did a very nice job to close out a win against Plainview in which it actually trailed at the half. That game was really derailed by some horrible weather like other games in the area. As far as Cooper, this team has a really different look than last year on the offensive side. With Colton Ehlers, if you recall, you consistently had him attacking the line and going forward, and the whole offense looked very aggressive. It's not that this year's team is really passive. It's just that it looks a little more precise. The quarterback, Jarrett Dagey, starts 11 of 12 for Cooper against Idalou in the first half of that game. 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. I think it looks really varied, and I'm curious to see what that will look like against a really stout Randall team. In terms of what looked good last week, the biggest thing is the Muleshoe defensive front. To get that much pressure on Levelland, it really impacted the Lobos and limited them to just 15 points. I thought that was outstanding, especially considering it wasn't blitzing a whole lot. That was pressure just from the ends, Dagan Dunham and Cameron Hardwick. I thought that was really refreshing to see from Muleshoe. The Idalou run game as well. The Wildcats trailed Cooper 21-10 after one half of play. But you have to remember, this is a 3A team against a 5A team. It's also missing its standout fullback in Ty Nichols. I think it showed a great ability to run, especially on its first scoring drive, which was it covered 81 yards to get a Schilling punched it in to make the game a little tighter with Cooper there. In terms of what didn't, the biggest thing that jumps out to me is actually Estacado's 16-7 loss to Hereford. I think, as we know, the Matadors' defense is going to be very strong because of the FBS level talent it has. The challenge really is going to be, can it get sophomore quarterback Bo Sims going? That's to be determined, I think. There were also a lot of drop balls for Estacado last week. If they can shore that up, I think perhaps we might see it do a pretty decent job against Dumas. Also, with Levelland, its defense is something that did not look particularly good, and it's an unfortunate trend that carried over from last year. We know a lot about the offense. We know about Nick Gerber and Tandon Jones and Quallen Miller and how Gerber was a selection to the Lone Star Varsity Super Team as the first team's quarterback as a sophomore. But its defense, if it can't get stops, it's really going to be concerning, I think, for Levelland. Also, Isaiah Cortez is out, the outstanding linebacker, banged up his knee in the first scrimmage that Levelland had, and I'm curious to see how that's going to impact the Lobos moving forward here. They will face Shallow Water Friday. Just to get you up to speed with everything else, in conclusion, our coverage has expanded pretty significantly. You, of course, get it in print in the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. Follow us, please, on LoneStarVarsity.com. All of our social media outlets as well, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and Periscope. We do what I think is a really compelling show on Friday nights after all of us come back from whichever games we're covering. And we're at Lone Star Varsity on all of those different social media sites. Once again, I'm Phil Torino. Thanks very much for watching.